Raskolnikov's confrontation with Svidrigailov shows that Raskolnikov must love something above himself. Svidrigailov's sensualism and its depravity repulse Raskolnikov, and Svidrigailov's suicide is partly in keeping with someone who no longer believes in his sensuality, and partly in keeping with the idea that Svidrigailov's view of himself is incomplete. Eventually, it seems, Svidrigailov does get him. Man cannot live by gambling, womanizing, and cunning alone. Svidrigailov is without faith, however, and he commits suicide when his gig is up. Also crucial for understanding Raskolnikov's eventual confession is his confrontation with Porfiry. He has 3 conversations with Porfiry over the course of the novel. Part 3, Section 5, when we are introduced to the Napoleonic man, Razumikin and Raskolnikov had gone to visit Porfiry. In Part 4, Section 5, right after telling Sonia that he will tell her about the murder tomorrow, Raskolnikov goes to the police station to calm his frayed nerves and talks with Porfiry. His nerves are not calmed. Then, in Part 6, Section 2, Porfiry comes to Raskolnikov, and, after beating around the bush in his usual way, he accuses Raskolnikov of the crime. "No, it was you, Rodion Romiach. It was you, sir. There's no one else," Porfiry whispered sternly and with conviction. When Raskolnikov goes to confess at the end of Part 6, he confesses to a flunky. Porfiry is not there. What is Porfiry's role in this book? Porfiry obviously represents the law. He is a lawman, a policeman, the thin blue line in a country that undergoes the revolutionary spirit. It is a dangerous job for sure, and one that wins him little honor among the set who want to overturn the law. But this is not enough of an answer if it is any part of the answer. Porfiry's role in the book is to represent the law, and the role of the law is to accuse, to show Raskolnikov his sin or his wrong. Porfiry would curb violence and accuse those who need accusing. Would Raskolnikov have confessed without the accusation? What is it about the accusation that makes him feel the need to confess? Porfiry is the agent in the book whereby Raskolnikov comes to have self-knowledge, and he has to be a knower of the human soul to do that. So Porfiry is the psychologist in the deepest sense, through whom Raskolnikov comes to know his own mind. We see this in the successive meetings in parts 3, 4, and 6. We have discussed the confrontation in part 3 already. Just a quick upshot will suffice for now. Porfiry has read Raskolnikov's treatment of how extraordinary men are immune from the dictates of conscience and the law. The revolutionary ideology is connected with a belief in the New Jerusalem, or a world beyond the conventional morality of the moment. Such a justification for murder in all conscience is, as Porfiry echoes near the end of the conversation, more horrible than if bloodshed were officially, legally permitted. No limiting principle exists within Raskolnikov's view. Raskolnikov is definitely shaken through this confrontation. He sees Porfiry as a great nemesis. Raskolnikov starts thinking about getting caught. "They have no facts," he complains in the next section before he sees the tradesman. All they have is double-edged psychology. But someone has finally accused Raskolnikov of what he really did and why he really did it. God knows, and Porfiry might know as well. He certainly seems to know. The next confrontation is in Part 4, Section 5. The immediate context is that Raskolnikov has formed a bond with Sonia, and he has promised to tell her who killed the pawnbroker tomorrow. Sonia had confessed her sins to Raskolnikov. He sees her sufferings for having sold herself to others. He fully understood the monstrous pain Sonia suffered and had long been suffering at the thought of her dishonorable and shameful position. As Raskolnikov thought about her situation, he thought there were three options open before her: suicide, the madhouse, and even greater depravity. But Sonia's faith makes her strong. Raskolnikov admires her. They part, planning to meet again tomorrow, and Raskolnikov's heart is softening. Then the next morning, Raskolnikov goes to the police station to visit Porfiry, and the accusation comes more clearly at this visit, though in a strange way characteristic of Porfiry. Porfiry babbles and talks inconsistently and endlessly in the conversation. Facts are double-edged. Psychology is double-edged. Human nature is a mirror, for pages on end, until Raskolnikov gets the idea. At last I see clearly that you definitely suspect me of murdering that old woman and her sister Lizaveta. Hovering around the accusation comes to equal the accusation, and Raskolnikov gets the chills. He is caught in lies. He cannot explain important facts, like why he never returned to get his pawned merchandise. At the end of the meeting, one of the painters at the pawnbroker's apartment actually confesses. This is part 4, section 6. Raskolnikov leaves thinking he is off the hook. He might confess to Sonia the next day, but he appears to be clear in the eyes of the law, so there will be no need for a full confession. But this position unravels, thanks again to Porfiry, in his last appearance in the book, part 6, section 2, when Porfiry comes to visit Raskolnikov for the first time. This visit begins with Raskolnikov wondering who is the greater nemesis, Svidrigailov or Porfiry. Perhaps he would kill the greater menace. Porfiry then explains how Raskolnikov came to be a suspect. The Napoleonic Man article, his open daring when talking with other police, the fact that Porfiry sent the tradesman to accuse him, but Raskolnikov did not deny it or even try to rebut the guy. Porfiry then tells Raskolnikov that Nikolai's confession has fallen apart. And finally he accuses. Who killed them? But you did, Rodion Romiych. You killed them, sir. Though Raskolnikov has already confessed to Sonia, this coming from Porfiry and the law is a bomb. How does Raskolnikov react? Porfiry wants him to confess, but Raskolnikov resists. He is filled with spite. He finds the idea of confessing ridiculous. Porfiry suggests that God might actually be lingering there, waiting for Raskolnikov's confession. And his accusation becomes very, very Christian at this point. Forget bourgeois shame, and do not be afraid to confess, he says. You've lost your faith, and you think I'm crudely flattering you. But how have you lived so far? How much do you understand? Raskolnikov's theorizing has not understood the real psychological source of human suffering. Ideology is juvenile. Christian psychology is sophisticated and true to experience. Raskolnikov has a need to suffer, and through that suffering, his faith may again grow. God has prepared a life for you. Become a son, and everyone will see you. Think, my dear. Pray to God, he says. When Raskolnikov suggests he might run away, Porfiry says that a man who no longer believes in his own theory will stick around and try to live a new life. The punishment will be penitence. His penitence will be a beacon for others who suffer. Confession will be good for his soul. It will be suffering too, but suffering is not all bad. One would expect Porfiry to be a rationalist, a detective, like Sherlock Holmes. But he ends up being more like Father Brown, more a knower of how important accusation and punishment is to a well-ordered soul. Porfiry counsels against suicide in his last words, but he insists that his suicide, should he try it, should contain a confession. "I wish you kind thoughts and good undertakings," are his last words, and thus Porfiry leaves the scene, and the drama of the book turns to Svidrigaïlov's suicide. We can see Porfiry's importance to the book. He stands for the law that accuses, but it is ultimately for a Christian purpose. Porfiry is always talking about psychology, and it is always Christian psychology, the importance of suffering, the goodness of confession, the achievement of self-knowledge for confession. Porfiry even recognizes that the problem of ideology will lead to many more lives being lost. Raskolnikov is lucky, Porfiry says. It's good that you only killed a little old woman. If you'd come up with a different theory, you might have done something 100 million times more hideous. Maybe you should still thank God. This is a chilling picture, given the whole 20th century and all. So Porfiry ends up the Christian philosopher of the law. No priest, but he plays the role of the priest in bringing Raskolnikov in through the way of suffering and conscience. The Christian of the book, however, is Sonia, the stepdaughter of Marmeladov and the agent of Raskolnikov's redemption. Let us look in more detail at Sonia in the next video.